It's a warm October evening in South Africa, the kind of evening where the day's heat is just beginning to loosen its grip. In a modest home in Vosloorus, on the east rand of Johannesburg, a family gathers. Laughter drifts from the kitchen. Somewhere, a football hero, a man whose gloves have stopped shots from some of the continent's finest strikers, walks through the front door, expecting nothing more than an ordinary night with people he loves. He has no idea it will be his last. Within minutes, a single gunshot will end his life and ignite a decade of unanswered questions that still haunt a nation. How could one of Africa's biggest football stars be killed inside a house full of people? Why, after more than 10 years, has the truth remained so painfully out of reach? And who really knows what happened inside that house on the night of October 26, 2014? This is the story of Senzo Meyiwa, a goalkeeper, a captain, a son, a father, a partner, a man South Africa was proud to call its own. This is the mystery that continues to haunt South Africa. Long before he wore the captain's armband for club and country, Senzo Meyiwa was just a boy from KwaZulu-Natal with a ball at his feet and a dream in his chest. He was born in the mid-1980s, and like so many South African boys of his generation, he grew up in a country still finding its footing, a country where football wasn't just a sport, but a lifeline, a way out, a way up, a way for a working-class kid to matter. Meyiwa didn't start out as the obvious star. He wasn't handed greatness. He earned it, one bench-warmed season at a time. He joined Orlando Pirates, one of South Africa's most storied and beloved football clubs, in the mid-2000s, arriving as a young reserve goalkeeper standing in the shadow of established number ones. For years, he watched from the sidelines as other men wore the gloves he wanted. When one first-choice keeper left, another arrived to take the position instead. It would have been easy for a lesser man to walk away. Meyiwa didn't. He waited. He trained. He believed. By the early 2000s, his patience began to pay off. Injuries to a teammate opened a door, and Meyiwa walked through it, and never looked back. He became a first-team regular, a wall between the posts, part of an Orlando Pirates side that would go on to complete back-to-back domestic trebles in the 2010-11 and 2011-12 seasons, sweeping league titles and cup competitions in a run that cemented the club's dominance and Meyiwa's place within it. In the 2013-14 season, his performances were rewarded with the league's Golden Glove Award, recognizing him as the finest goalkeeper in South African football. And then came the armband. In the final months of his life, Meyiwa was named captain of Orlando Pirates, one of only a small number of black South African goalkeepers to captain a top-flight club in the country's history. Around the same time, national team coach Shakes Mashaba handed him the captaincy of Bafana Bafana, South Africa's beloved national side. It was an extraordinary honor for a man who had once been a bench player fighting for minutes. In his final international appearances, Meyiwa didn't just wear the armband, he delivered, keeping clean sheets in most of his final matches for his country. To football fans across South Africa, Meyiwa represented something bigger than saves and clean sheets. He represented perseverance, the idea that a boy from humble beginnings, through patience and discipline, could rise to lead his nation. He was, by all accounts, a humble man, a private man, a man who let his performances speak and who carried his growing fame with quiet dignity. Nobody watching him organize his defense, command his box, and marshal a backline with calm authority could have imagined how little time he had left. On the evening of October 25, 2014, Senzo Meyiwa did what he always did best. He stood between the posts for Orlando Pirates in a Carling Black Label Knockout Cup fixture against Ajax Cape Town and helped guide his team to a commanding 4-1 victory. As he walked off that pitch, saluting the fans one final time, he had no way of knowing it was the last match of his career, and very nearly the last hours of his life. On October 26, 2014, Senzo Meyiwa entered a house in Vosloorus, expecting an ordinary evening. No one inside knew that before the night ended, South Africa would lose one of its brightest sporting stars, and investigators would begin searching for answers that would take years to uncover. October 26, 2014, began like many ordinary Sundays in South Africa. Families gathered, conversations flowed, life continued. But before the night was over, a single moment inside a home in Vosloorus would change the lives of everyone involved and leave an entire nation searching for answers. The man at the center of the tragedy was not just a footballer. He was South Africa's national team captain. He was a son, a father, a teammate, a hero. His name was Senzo Meyiwa. According to information presented during the investigation and later court proceedings, Senzo Meyiwa was visiting the home of his then-girlfriend, singer and actress Kelly Khumalo, in Vosloorus, Gauteng. Several people were inside the house that evening. Among those reported to have been present were family members, friends, and visitors. What happened inside that house would later become the focus of one of South Africa's most controversial murder investigations. The evening appeared normal. People were spending time together. There was a conversation. There was food. There was the presence of family and friends. But shortly after 8 p.m., the atmosphere changed forever. According to the accounts given to investigators, armed intruders entered the house. A confrontation followed. A gunshot was fired. Senzo Meyiwa was struck. Within moments, a national football hero was fighting for his life. The exact sequence of events inside the house became one of the central issues in the investigation and later court proceedings. Different accounts and interpretations of that night have been discussed publicly, making the case one of the most closely followed criminal matters in South Africa. After the shooting, Senzo was rushed to hospital, but despite efforts to save him, he was pronounced dead on arrival. South Africa had lost its football captain. He was only 27 years old. In the immediate aftermath, police described the incident as a robbery gone wrong. Composite images of suspects were released to the public. Days later, on October 31st, 2014, a young man named Zamakule Mbatha was arrested and appeared in court in connection with the case. But by mid-November, he had been released, with authorities citing a lack of sufficient evidence to proceed. But behind the sadness was another emotion. Questions. How did this happen? Who was responsible? Why had a case involving one of the country's most famous athletes become so difficult to solve? When news of Senzo Meyiwa's death spread, disbelief quickly turned into grief. For many South Africans, it felt impossible. A man who had represented hope and pride had been taken away at the height of his career. Messages of sadness came from football supporters, politicians, athletes, and ordinary citizens. The country wanted answers. Immediately after the killing, investigators began searching for answers. The investigation attracted enormous public attention. Every development was followed closely. Every statement was examined. Every unanswered question increased public frustration. For many people, this was not only about a football star. It was about justice. Senzo Meyiwa had spent his life protecting goals on the football field. Now, after his death, his family, supporters, and an entire nation were waiting for another kind of protection. The protection that comes from truth. A promising career had been interrupted. A family had lost a loved one. And South Africa had entered a mystery that would continue for years. The investigation had begun. But the road to justice would be long, complicated, and filled with questions. Football is more than a game. For millions of people, it is a language, a source of identity, a reason to celebrate, and sometimes a place where a nation finds hope. In South Africa, few players represented that hope like Senzo Meyiwa. But on October 26, 2014, the cheers stopped. The stadiums became quiet, and a nation mourned the sudden loss of a man who had carried the dreams of millions. The announcement of Senzo Meyiwa's death sent shockwaves across South Africa. The news spread quickly. From football supporters in Johannesburg to communities across the country, People struggled to accept what had happened. A national team captain had been killed. A player at the peak of his career was gone, and the questions surrounding his death had only just begun. For many supporters, Senzo was not only admired because of his talent, they admired his journey. He represented determination. He represented the belief that success was possible regardless of where someone started. His story inspired young footballers who dreamed of one day wearing their country's colors. The football community responded with grief. Players, coaches, and supporters paid tribute to a goalkeeper who had become one of South Africa's most recognizable sporting figures. His club, Orlando Pirates, and the national football community remembered a player whose leadership had grown stronger with every match. For his teammates, the loss was deeply personal. They had shared training sessions, victories, defeats, and the pressure of representing millions of fans. Now, they had to continue without their captain. Tributes poured in from across the football world. Then President Jacob Zuma publicly mourned Meyiwa, describing him as a humble man and a hero to South Africa's youth. Former FIFA President Sepp Blatter called his death a senseless tragedy. Spanish goalkeeping legend Iker Casillas, who had exchanged jerseys with Meyiwa during an international friendly, shared his grief publicly. As a mark of respect, the Soweto Derby, one of the most fiercely contested and beloved fixtures in South African football between Orlando Pirates and rivals Kaizer Chiefs, was postponed. On November 1, 2014, Meyiwa was given a state funeral at Moses Mabhida Stadium in Durban. An estimated 30,000 mourners filled the stadium. Fans, teammates, football administrators, and political figures all gathered to say goodbye to a man who, just days earlier, had been standing tall between the posts for his country. He was laid to rest in Chesterville, KwaZulu-Natal. Orlando Pirates would go on to permanently retire the #1 jersey in his honor, a rare tribute in South African club football, reserved for a man the club considered irreplaceable. For many young people, Senzo was proof that dreams could become reality. His passing forced many to confront a painful reality. Even those who appear strongest can become victims of unexpected tragedy. As the country mourned, another feeling began to grow. A demand for answers. People wanted to understand how such a tragedy could happen. They wanted accountability. They wanted justice. The case quickly became bigger than football. It became a national conversation about crime, investigations, and the search for truth. Every update attracted attention. Every delay raised new concerns. The public wanted to know who was responsible for Senzo Meyiwa's death, and would justice ever be served? Behind the headlines was a family dealing with unimaginable loss. Senzo was not only a goalkeeper, he was someone's son, someone's father, someone's friend. The world knew him as a football captain. But to those closest to him, he was a person whose absence left a permanent wound. A career filled with promise had ended suddenly. A nation that once celebrated his saves was now searching for answers about his death. And as the investigation continued, the mystery surrounding that night would become one of South Africa's most followed criminal cases. Senzo Meyiwa spent his life standing between danger and the goal. But on one tragic night, he could not protect himself. His legacy remained. His memory remained. But one question continued to echo. Who was responsible? The search for the truth had only begun. When a national hero is killed, a country expects answers. But sometimes the search for truth is not measured in days. It is measured in years. After Senzo Meyiwa was shot and killed on October 26, 2014, investigators faced enormous pressure. The victim was not an ordinary person. He was South Africa's football captain. Millions of people wanted justice. Millions wanted to know who was responsible and why did the investigation take so long. Immediately after the shooting, police began investigating the circumstances surrounding Senzo's death. The case attracted intense public attention from the beginning. The location of the shooting, the number of people present, and the different accounts surrounding the events of that evening became central parts of the investigation. authorities worked to establish what happened inside the house in Vosloorus. As with many complex criminal investigations, investigators had to examine multiple pieces of information. This included witness statements, forensic evidence, and other investigative material. The challenge was to determine what could be proven and what questions still needed answers. As months passed, public frustration grew. Many South Africans believed that a case involving such a prominent figure should have been solved quickly. The lack of a clear resolution created widespread discussion and speculation. The public wanted progress. They wanted accountability. They wanted the truth. But criminal investigations are often complicated. Evidence must be tested. Witness accounts must be examined. And prosecutors must determine whether there is enough evidence to proceed with charges. The passage of time became one of the most discussed parts of the Senzo Meyiwa case. Over the years, the investigation involved different police teams and renewed efforts to solve the case. Authorities continued searching for answers. The case remained active, even as public attention continued to grow. The investigation also became the subject of intense media coverage. Journalists examined every development. The public followed every announcement. But while many theories circulated, investigators and the courts had the responsibility of separating facts from assumptions. In a criminal case, suspicion alone is not enough. A conviction requires evidence that meets the standard required by law. Every claim must be tested. Every piece of evidence must be examined. And every person accused has the right to defend themselves in court. The search for justice in the Senzo Meyiwa case would eventually move from the investigation stage into the courtroom. But before that happened, years would pass. Years filled with questions. Years filled with public debate. Years in which one question remained at the center. Who killed Senzo Meyiwa? Despite the passing of time, Senzo's name never disappeared. His football achievements continued to be remembered. His story continued to attract attention, and the demand for justice remained strong. For a goalkeeper, the mission is simple. Protect the goal. Stand firm under pressure. Fight until the final whistle. But for Senzo Meyiwa's family and supporters, the final whistle never came. The search for answers continued. Years after the tragedy, the investigation would reach a new chapter. Suspects would be arrested. Evidence would be presented. And the questions surrounding one of South Africa's most famous unsolved murders would move into the courtroom. For years, the question remained the same. Who killed Senzo Meyiwa? The investigation continued through uncertainty, public pressure, and unanswered questions. But in 2020, almost 6 years after the football star's death, the case entered a dramatic new phase. Authorities announced arrests. For many South Africans, it was a moment that brought renewed hope. But it also marked the beginning of another difficult journey, a courtroom battle where evidence, testimony, and legal arguments would determine what could be proven. In October 2020, South African authorities announced the arrest of 5 men in connection with the murder of Senzo Meyiwa. The men were charged with offenses including murder and related charges. The arrests came almost 6 years after the shooting. The announcement attracted enormous public attention. Many people hoped that the long-awaited answers would finally come. However, an arrest is not the same as a conviction. In any criminal case, those accused are considered innocent unless proven guilty in a court of law. The responsibility of the court is to examine the evidence and determine whether the prosecution has proved its case beyond a reasonable doubt. The trial became one of the most closely followed criminal proceedings in South Africa. The public watched as prosecutors and defense lawyers presented their arguments. At the center of the case was one crucial question. Could the evidence presented in court establish who was responsible for Senzo Meyiwa's death? During the proceedings, prosecutors presented their version of events and the evidence they said connected the accused men to the crime. The state relied on testimony, investigative findings, and other evidence presented before the court. However, as with all criminal trials, claims made by prosecutors must be tested through the legal process. The defense challenged aspects of the state's case. They questioned evidence presented by prosecutors and argued their position before the court. In a criminal trial, this process is fundamental. Both sides have the opportunity to present their arguments. The court must then decide based on the evidence and the law. As witnesses gave testimony, the case attracted even greater public attention. Statements made in court were closely examined by journalists and the public. Some testimony raised further questions. Some details became the subject of national debate. But courtroom testimony must be evaluated carefully. A statement made in court is part of a legal process where evidence is tested through questioning and cross-examination. The reason for the intense attention was not only because Senzo Meyiwa was famous, it was because his death represented something much deeper. A family lost a loved one. A football team lost a leader. A nation lost a symbol of hope. And many people wanted to see justice reached. Every courtroom has its own pace. Every case has its own challenges. But this case carried the weight of a nation's emotions. For Senzo's family and supporters, the trial represented more than legal arguments. It represented a search for closure. Years after that tragic night in Vosloorus, the story of Senzo Meyiwa remained unfinished. The courtroom had become the new battlefield. Evidence would be examined, arguments would be challenged, and the truth would depend on what could be proven. But even inside the courtroom, many questions continued to echo. Questions about that night, questions about the evidence, questions about what really happened. Some mysteries disappear with time. Others become more powerful. The longer they remain unanswered, the more people search for the missing pieces. The murder of Senzo Meyiwa became one of those cases. Years after his death, the world still wanted to understand one thing: what truly happened inside that house in Vosloorus on the night of October 26, 2014. The official investigation focused on the events that unfolded inside the house where Senzo was killed. According to accounts presented during the investigation and court proceedings, an armed confrontation occurred inside the home. However, the details surrounding the incident became the subject of intense examination. Different accounts, witness statements, and interpretations of events created public debate. In a criminal trial, conflicting accounts are not unusual. The role of the court is to examine evidence carefully, consider testimony, and determine which facts have been proven. A difference between statements does not automatically reveal the truth. It shows why evidence must be tested through the legal process. One of the reasons the case attracted so much attention was the fact that several people were present at the time of the shooting. The question that followed was difficult. If there were witnesses inside the home, why did the case take so long to reach the courtroom? This question became a major part of public discussion. The public examined every detail that became available. Some focused on unanswered questions. Others focused on the evidence presented in court. But throughout the process, it remained important to separate confirmed facts from speculation. Because Senzo Meyiwa was a national sports icon, his death received enormous media attention. The public followed every development, every arrest, every court appearance, every new statement. But intense public interest can also create challenges. In high-profile cases, opinions can spread faster than verified information. The courtroom operates differently from public opinion. Evidence must meet legal standards. Claims must be supported, and accusations must be proven. This principle protects everyone involved: victims, families, and accused persons. The investigation faced criticism over the length of time it took to reach the arrest stage. The delay became one of the most discussed aspects of the case. Questions were raised about investigative progress and whether opportunities had been missed. However, only evidence presented through proper legal channels can establish what happened. For Senzo's family, the case has always represented more than headlines and courtroom arguments. It represents a person they lost, a father, a son, a loved one. For supporters, it represents the loss of a football hero whose career was cut short. The questions surrounding Senzo Meyiwa's death continue to capture attention because they touch something deeper than football. They touch the human desire for truth, the desire to understand, the desire for justice. The story of Senzo Meyiwa is not only about how a famous footballer died, it is about the long journey to uncover what happened. A journey through investigation, a journey through the courts, a journey where every piece of evidence matters. And until the legal process reaches its conclusion, One question remains at the heart of this story. What really happened that night? Behind every headline is a human story. Behind every investigation file is a family waiting for answers. And behind every famous name is a person whose absence leaves a space that can never truly be filled. Senzo Meyiwa was remembered by the world as a football captain. But to those closest to him, he was much more than that. He was a son, a father, a friend, a teammate, a person whose life was taken far too soon. To millions of football supporters, Senzo represented courage and determination. They saw the goalkeeper making important saves. They saw the captain leading his team. They saw the athlete who carried the hopes of a nation. But away from the stadium lights was another side of Senzo, the private side known by family and friends. Like anyone else, Senzo had a life beyond his career. He had relationships, responsibilities, dreams for the future. His death did not only end a football journey, it changed the lives of everyone connected to him. For Senzo's family, the pain of losing him was combined with the difficult wait for answers. Grief is already a heavy burden, but when a loved one's death remains surrounded by questions, the emotional weight can become even greater. The search for justice became part of the family's journey, not only to understand what happened, but also to preserve the memory of the person they lost. Senzo's death also left a deep mark on South African football. A national team captain had been lost at a time when his career was reaching a significant moment. His teammates lost someone they shared the pressure and responsibility of representing their country with. Supporters lost a player who had given them moments of pride. Football careers can be measured in trophies, appearances, and statistics. But some players are remembered for something more. They are remembered for what they represented. For many South Africans, Senzo represented ambition, resilience, and possibility. The continued attention surrounding the case shows how deeply Senzo's story affected the public. People wanted answers. They wanted accountability. They wanted the truth to be established through the justice system. But justice is a process. It requires evidence. It requires careful examination. And it requires patience as courts consider the facts presented before them. Although his life ended suddenly, Senzo Meyiwa's influence continues. Young footballers who watched him play still remember his journey. A young boy who worked toward a dream. A goalkeeper who became a captain. A player who represented his country. His story reminds people that behind every public figure is a human being with hopes, struggles, and loved ones. The world remembers the footballer, but his family remembers the man. A goalkeeper's purpose is to stand strong when others depend on him. Senzo Meyiwa spent his career protecting his team's dreams, but after his death, the people who loved him were left waiting for another kind of protection, the truth. His legacy remains, his memory remains, and the search for justice continues. Some people are remembered because of what they achieved. Others are remembered because of what they represented. Senzo Meyiwa belonged to both categories. He was a footballer who reached the highest levels of his sport, but he was also a symbol of determination, leadership, and hope. Years after his death, his name continues to live on, not only because of how he died, but because of how he lived. Senzo's journey from a young football dreamer to the captain of South Africa's national team remains one of the most inspiring parts of his story. He showed that success was built through patience, discipline, and commitment. He became the person many young players dreamed of becoming: a professional, a leader, a national representative. For young footballers across South Africa, Senzo became an example of what was possible. His story showed that talent alone was not enough. It required sacrifice. It required hard work. It required the courage to keep going, even when the journey was difficult. But after his death, Senzo's story moved beyond football. It became a national conversation about justice, accountability, and the search for truth. The attention surrounding the case showed how deeply people cared about him. They were not only mourning a goalkeeper, they were mourning a person whose life had touched many others. In any criminal case, justice depends on facts. It depends on evidence. It depends on a fair legal process. The murder of Senzo Meyiwa has been followed closely because many people want answers. But the responsibility of the justice system is to establish those answers through evidence presented and tested in court. The people accused in the case have the right to defend themselves. The prosecution has the responsibility to prove its case, and the court must carefully consider all evidence before reaching a decision. This principle is at the heart of justice. The reason people continue to talk about Senzo Meyiwa is simple. A life was lost. A family was changed forever. A nation was left with questions. His story reminds us that behind every crime statistic is a human being, someone with dreams, someone with loved ones, someone whose future was taken away. On the football field, a goalkeeper's job is to protect the goal, to stand between danger and victory, to make the save when everyone is depending on them. Senzo Meyiwa spent his career doing exactly that. But on one October night in 2014, South Africa lost more than a football captain. It lost a son, a father, a leader, a symbol of hope. The story of Senzo Meyiwa is not only a story about a tragic death, it is a story about a life that inspired millions. It is a story about the importance of truth. It is a reminder that every victim deserves justice, and every unanswered question deserves a careful search for the facts. Until the full legal process reaches its conclusion, the mystery surrounding Senzo Meyiwa's death remains one of South Africa's most closely watched cases. A goalkeeper's job is to protect the goal, but on one October night, South Africa lost more than a captain. It lost a symbol of hope. And until every question is answered, the mystery of Senzo Meyiwa's death will remain one of the nation's most haunting, unfinished stories. If you believe every victim deserves justice and every story deserves the truth, subscribe to Hidden Truth African. We will continue uncovering Africa's hidden truths, one story at a time. Now we want to hear from you. What story do you want Hidden Truth African to bring to light next? Is there a mystery, forgotten case, or untold African story you believe deserves to be heard? Share your thoughts in the comment section. Your suggestion could become our next investigation. Thank you for watching, and remember, every mystery has a story. Every story deserves the truth. Hidden Truth African.